Ladies and gentlemen, I am excited to have Carlos Navarro with me on the podcast today. So, sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, I like to start out with if you could give an intro of yourself, what you're doing currently, what you've done before this, and we'll just kind of roll from there.
Okay. Yeah. So currently, I actually own, or starting actually, a brokerage agency, an insurance brokerage agency. Previously, I did own an Allstate agency as well. So it's basically almost like a franchise type model, I guess you could say. So you're responsible for your own sales, you're responsible for all that kind of stuff. So I did that for about 5 years. My sister actually took over the business on the Allstate side. And now I decided to start basically over with the brokerage side.
Okay.
Things.
And then is the brokerage for insurance similar to a brokerage for real estate? Whereas if you're the broker, then there can be insurance agents underneath you, or how does that work?
So it could, I mean, every business model is different. So yes, you can really design it that way. But what it really means is it's more of you're able to go ahead and contract out those insurance plans with not just one single company like you will be with Allstate or State Farm or any of those big companies, but you can actually broker it out to many other companies all at once. So, for example, Progressive, some of the other companies that were basically on the brokerage type model where they deal with independent agents instead of contractors.
Okay. Awesome. So, and then what made you move from going, hey, I'm with Allstate to let's open this up to everybody and be able to play the field?
Right. So that's quite a bit of a long story on the history of everything. So basically, when I first started with Allstate, I struggled. I struggled pretty badly. So in part of that struggle, fast forward to actually the part leaving is my commission and the way the business was set up was unsustainable. Basically, it's a lot of residuals that the business is based off of. So if you don't get the residuals, it's really hard to survive. So
what's a residual?
So residual basically is where instead of just getting part of the sale or getting a sale one time, you're getting the sale multiple times. So every single time someone renews a policy, you get part of that commission all over again. So what happens is if you don't have the residuals in place, it's very hard to actually go ahead and actually continue the business and be sustainable long term. So that's basically where things flipped. It made more sense for my sister to take over based on certain incentives that she was going to get compared to what I was getting. So it just made perfect sense. I was thinking of the broker side already. I did have some ideas. But her coming in made the most sense for everybody. Okay.
And then as far as that transition, how much did you have to change going from the specific agency to now we're going to be opening it up to a broker side?
Well, it was more knowledge-wise, right? So on being able to recruit customers, that kind of thing, it does change a little bit just because before I have a brand name, being behind me. After that, basically, yes, I have to establish everything myself. Which makes a bit of a difference, but nothing too crazy. The biggest difference is being knowledgeable on not just the product for your one company, but product for multiple companies.
Gotcha. Is there any brick and mortar requirements? I know for real estate, like we've got to be an agent for 3 years, go through another education course, and then if we want to get our brokerage license, we have to have a physical location. So if as an agent, I could be like, hey, I'm going to operate out of my house. Right. My license is still hung with Realty One Group, but and then I can run around, do all that stuff. But if I want to be a broker, I'd have to have a place similar to this that we're in right now, where it's someone could theoretically walk in and say, hey, how's it going? And then go from there. Do you guys have any of those requirements or weird stuff like that?
There is, to a certain point, yes. So with the state, there's no requirement like that. You can work from home. That's not a big deal. So on the state side of things, it's pretty good. On the company side, so like I said, being a broker, I have to basically have a contract with different companies, right, to be able to sell their products.
Right.
So on that part, there was requirements. So on that part, each company does have their requirements on what they expect, brick and mortar, that kind of stuff, which many of the bigger companies, I could say they did have before. And what I mean by that is with COVID starting, that kind of just changed the whole landscape for everybody. Being that they're companies, they're able to, be flexible and change their business model, you could say.
Right.
So that's basically what a lot of these companies have done, which made it a lot easier to do that part. You still have to have some backing experience. That kind of stuff does help, of course, still to be able to convince them that you're capable. But there is no specific laws or rules in place externally besides the actual companies themselves that were willing to work with you.
Oh, okay. And then are there certifications and licenses that go into all of that?
Yeah.
Or-
So you do have to have an insurance license, a property and casualty license, to sell auto and home, and commercial. There's personal lines licenses just to the personal side of things, and depending on how big or how many products you are willing to offer, then it can actually be more and more licensing that it may require. So, for example, in my case, I had 4 different licenses. I had 4 different licenses with Allstate specifically. 2 of those licenses I let go because those are licenses I was not necessarily using. They're honestly the most expensive ones. They just didn't make sense for me. So I let 2 of those licenses go. But it depends on how many products and what kind of products you're wanting to sell.
Right. Yeah. It's funny how like all these things have the weird licenses. Like I know for us, we've got to do like 24 hours of continued education every 24 months and all that stuff. Yeah. And it's like, all right, whatever it is, like.
No, very similar. Yeah, you have to continue licensing, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, that's just part of it.
Yeah. And then was there anything that changed for you as far as mentally or just with your outlook on things when you had to switch from, hey, I'm with Allstate to now when I'm with a brokerage? Or was it a pretty simple switch to say like, it's more I have a wider range to offer to people? Mm-hmm. Or is there in any way a difference as far as like, hey, I want to be able to do different things with this? Is it more, hey, I'm on my own, so then you feel like, hey, I've got to really make this happen? Or how'd you feel going into all that?
So the knowledge part of it, when it comes to like say the products and the systems, that's really where some of the differences come into play. So for example, just being able to use specific insurance type of broker specific applications, right? But that's basically as far as it goes. It's more of just being familiar with some of the stuff. It's not necessarily things that you can just YouTube out there, right? So it makes it a little bit more difficult to try to get an understanding of it.
You're telling me that YouTube is not just racking up hits on insurance policies?
Right. I mean, nobody's just out there. No brokers out there really telling them their business model, right? So
yeah.
So or some of the basics, I guess you could say. Just because the reason I say that is because some of the stuff I had to learn are more of the things that are very, very basic, intro level. So if I had worked for a broker, those are the things I will learn, right? How to use the applications, how to go around and figure out which companies are best for different scenarios and things like that. Those are the very basic that an entry level sales guy is going to learn from day one. I didn't have that experience. I had to kind of learn that stuff on my own, which makes it a little more difficult. The higher level stuff, managing the office or managing people or managing the actual systems and customers and so forth, that basically transfers over.
Right.
It's the little pieces that kind of build everything up that I have to figure out.
Yeah, makes sense. And then you mentioned, I think when we had a conversation together, that there's quite a bit of turnover within people who have insurance policies, because a lot of times now people are they'll see, oh, you can get me a better rate, and they'll just bounce around because it's almost like a phone plan where it's like, hey, we're not going to give you a deal for existing company or customers, but if you come over here and you're a new customer, we'll hook you up. So it seems like there's a lot of, is it similar to that?
So there is and there isn't, actually. I'll share some of the things about it. So there is, as in, if you stay with a company too long, right, you have no idea if you're really paying the market or not. I mean, things change. I mean, the companies will definitely increase the prices sometimes. But there's times where some companies, they want to be more aggressive. So they'll cut rates, they'll do things. They might not take a good profit, but that's just their way of attracting customers, right? Just getting customers in their doors. In the future, they might increase the prices, they might make some changes, but that's their way of being able to get people in.
Right.
So that happens. On the opposite side, on the contrary side of that, however, is there are also I'm starting to see more and more companies actually penalizing people that are just jumping from one company to the other. So if you've been with one company for 6 months, the policy expires, and the rate goes up, and you don't like that rate, and you shop and you find someone else that happens to give you a good rate. You could have possibly gotten an even better rate if you were with the previous company for a year, 2 years, 3 years. So there is definitely some sort of
loyalty incentive.
Loyalty that they're wanting to get right. So they know a customer's been there for 5 years. Oh, that one, they still want that customer, but they want that customer to stay with them for 5 years.
Right.
So yeah, there's definitely some incentives in that aspect as well.
Nice. And then how do you go about as far as when you're trying to acquire new customers? Like, is it door knocking? Are you farming an area with advertising? Social media stuff, all of it.
So I mean, there's a little bit of everything. Not so much on the social media. I focus so much. I mean, I focus on door knocking, door marketing. I focused on working more with mortgage reps, having partners, that kind of thing. So in each category, right, has different closing ratios, has different type of customers that you may be getting. So, for example, on working with lenders, I mean, those are many times they're first time home buyers, or they're buying a new house, or moving from out of town, that kind of thing. So those are typically great customers. I mean, and quite honestly, that's when I prefer to actually deal with customers, and not so much on the aspect of there's a preference between one customer and another. But if you're buying a house, most likely you looked at your credit, you make sure your credit's good, you make sure all your stuff is in line, everything's good to go. So that's usually the best time to also be shopping for insurance. So yes, you have to get a homeowner's insurance at that point, because you need to buy a house, right? So that's part of the that's an income ratio you might have to take a look at, depending on their income and all that kind of stuff that you have to do on the mortgage side to make sure that insurance makes sense. However, that's also the best time to usually get the auto as well, because I mean, usually as soon as you become a homeowner, you get better pricing on the auto. Your credit rating is probably that much better, so you have better pricing because of that as well. Plus, there's a bundling aspect of things as well. So all these things kind of like group together at that time as well, which makes it a perfect time usually to shop around as well.
Yeah. Do you network a lot with people, as far as if it's like on my side with realtors or other? Are there any other businesses that you'd kind of interact with, just to be like, hey, like if you've got someone who's needing to make a move, like I can take care of it.
Well, yeah, just kind of similar to how lenders reach out to realtors, trying to get that business. Same thing, insurance guys reach out to the lenders, trying to get that business from them. So yeah, very similar on that aspect. So there's a lot of networking, a lot of just getting to know them, and honestly, becoming friends with them. I mean, that's usually how. It's not necessarily something. Hey, just give me something. Usually, it becomes more of a friendship type of thing. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of that happens. Depending on the business model, right? Like I prefer working that way. Having friends in the industry, getting to know people. But each person has their way. Each agency or insurance agency has their own way of marketing and doing things.
Right. To me, it's very interesting, as far as, I know I mentioned this on the last podcast I did, but the relationship aspect that is still so prevalent inside business. It's people my age, they want to set it up to where it's Instagram, Facebook, hammer that marketing, but then it's like you talk to anyone who's in business and it's like, no, that's a tool, but if you ignore the networking person to person, like we have people who come in for our real estate group, and once a month we'll have 2 lenders who come in. We have a title company, and usually we'll have a 4th week off for our meetings, but it's just constantly where it's like we're looking to maintain the relationships with our partners, because in the end we know that we're only as good as the people that we work with.
No, 100% correct. I mean, because you can rely on your partners a lot more, right? Let's say you're working with 5, 10 partners, whatever they are. They're consistent saying you certain business. We know sometimes they'll struggle. There's certain things happen in the industry. Of course, that's normal. But you kind of have an idea what to expect month after month. But however, if you're focused on social media, you're focused on any other aspect. Hey, algorithms change in Facebook, right? I mean, they just made a major change with Apple and the whole thing. Things happen in those industries that you have no control over.
Right.
So you can put the content out there, you can do all
Yep.
kinds of stuff, but you have no control of who's actually going to see it. Maybe you're not going to be in the explore section at that time, whatever happens. So, and without any control, you might be affected, right, negatively.
Yeah.
And that's usually where things struggle. I mean, that's even if you're able to build it up in the first place, which, obviously takes work and
Right.
dedication, and, usually it's a long time before anybody really even knows you're out there. But if you go through that whole process, I mean, yeah, there's always the ups and downs that can happen, which I'm not saying telling anybody not to do it. Of course, that's a tool.
It's
definitely.
just setting the expectation.
It's just setting the expectation that, hey, like, I need to make sure that in case something happens here, I'm diverse in my marketing plan.
Yeah. And I think in the end, just like you said, it's Facebook, Instagram, like whatever the company is, they're going to get into quarrels. And they're going to go through their stuff, or they're going to realize that they've got the leverage over whoever.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, the idea, like, that tool might go away, it might diminish, but in the end, relationships, at least for the foreseeable future, are not going away.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not the kind of person that's going to be like, okay, everything's going to stay the same forever. I get things change, and you have to adapt to changes. But as of right now, yes, it's still that, very much that way.
Yeah. And then I wanted to ask, as far as, I feel like there's misconceptions about what realtors do at times. There's, and then I think same thing with insurance, a lot of the companies like that. So what kind of misconceptions do you deal with, and kind of expectations do people have coming in that you have to be like, all right, like, I know that usually this is in someone's head, but let me give it to you straight.
Right. So one thing that happens is that sometimes customers, they feel like I have control over prices, right? Like I have control over the
car salesman.
Yeah, the car salesman.
What's your bottom dollar?
Exactly, right. So sometimes there's conceptions like, let's say prices go up, something happens, they call me like, hey, what's going on? Why is my price going up? No, if you don't bring the price back down, I'm leaving. I'm like, well, I can only do so much. Of course, I talk to them, try to explain things and so forth of what's going on. And sometimes it has to do with, maybe previous incidents. Sometimes they have accidents, but they don't like that affecting their price for some reason. Or sometimes it really is, just a marketing change. The company does a price increase, overall. And if that happens, I mean, there's really is no control over. I mean, that's just across the board. It's gonna go up a certain percentage based on whatever metrics and stuff that they submit. But so those are usually the biggest thing. My goal is always to offer the best product at the best price, put my commission side aside, and figure out as long as I do the best thing, everything's gonna work itself out. Just because I know I want customers to actually trust me instead of feeling like I'm trying to make an extra buck here and there.
Right.
Because there's definitely some stuff that unfortunately does happen when some broker, especially brokers out there, agents. I mean, if it's an agent, you only have one company, you can't really do much. I mean, that it is what it is. But on the broker side of things, unfortunately, there is some shady stuff that happens sometimes in that industry. So it's definitely a much of a trust factor to make sure people actually know I'm doing the best thing for them and not just trying to look for myself.
Right. And it seems that it's paralleled to real estate in the same exact way, because there's people who come in with the expectation that, like, all we do is work on our smiles and sales tactics to somehow all right, we're gonna get you to buy this house, or we're just in it for the commission. And it's like, just like you said, if you chase the commission, then you're not gonna have a customer.
Right. Exactly.
So
exactly.
Then how have you seen kind of the industry change in the last several years, as far as, obviously, like, you're in a new role now, but just kind of when you're looking at insurance, what has changed in the last couple of years? Or has it been pretty steady and kind of just insurance is still insurance?
No, it's definitely changed. The biggest change right now is data. Just like, here Google's and Facebook's and everybody trying to collect your data. That's definitely a big thing in insurance as well. And the whole reason behind it is they basically want to be able to insurance is very much about the numbers game, right? It's statistics. That's really, at the end of the day, that's what insurance is, statistics. What are the odds of you crashing someone, and people like you, that same age, same sort, and then try to classify you to a certain point, right? So based on zip code, based on your age, based on your driving history,
based on the chip that you put in your car.
Exactly. Yeah, even based on the car that you're driving, that certain cars describe certain things. Yeah, everything has a number, right? So they try to classify. Okay, this is the risks of this one customer. So the more data they have, the better they're able to analyze everything, right? So now they're going into the whole. I forgot. There's IntelliDrive. There's all these telematics, basically what they call it in industry, telematics, where they go ahead and actually are able to determine, your specific driving habits, and now they're able to determine rates based specifically on you. So it's not there yet where they're actually determining the rate specifically on customers.
Yeah,
they're able to go ahead and almost like use your profile and driving habits, and they kind of like tailor it in a way to generalize it. But there is definitely a big push for it. So before it started with Allstate and Progressive doing those big things, but now I cannot think of one company that's not pushing this a lot. And I say that as in there is a big push to us to push it for customers, and basically it's gonna be a more of a normal thing. So if people are planning on switching companies, expect this to be a big part of the conversation, or an expectation to get, just because it's been a big push of all the companies trying to get the data themselves.
So instead of like a public data, they've got an individual where they're individually they're trying to go in and figure out.
Right. Yes. So they want to know how fast you typically drive, the time of day people typically drive, how they brake. All that information.
Interesting.
To trying to narrow things down even more.
So would that be from the plugins they say they incentivize for you to put in your car, or are they even going deeper with being like, hey, can we get in contact with the Google or an Apple to say, hey, you've got GPS on these guys, just.
Actually, so the big one that everybody will see, yes, is the plugin. Now it's on the phone. So now they want you to have the app on the phone, right? And they'll track it that way, because now they want to track, are you even unlocking your phone while you're driving as well? So they want to see that part, along with making it easier for them to kind of have the app with you, right? Instead of giving you mailing you something. But I like when you mentioned, is there anything else? Because yeah, I mean, I've had some companies mentioned about how they're tracking basically the mileage on your car without you really realizing. If you take your car into dealership to get an oil change, they get the mileage on your car, right, to tell you when the next oil change is. They put it in their system. Well, all that information is being sold as well, and some insurance companies are buying that information and now determining, okay, this is how much this person actually drives. This person's saying they drive this much, but no, they're actually driving this much.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
more and more gone are the days where you can just be like, oh no, I commute to work 5 miles away.
Right. Yeah. Some there's some companies out there that are actually tweaking that and to the driver, to the car level. And making those changes and knowing exactly to the mile what you're driving.
That's insane.
Yeah. It's getting the data out there is beyond I ever imagined. It's definitely apparently something that's just becoming more of a normal thing.
Yeah. Something I ask a lot of people is, what are some of the obstacles that you'll see within your job as far as that you've got to kind of overcome? So usually, if I talk to someone in construction, it's a little easier as far as just to be like, hey, did you have a project that went sideways? So
right.
Do you have any stuff where it's you'll have on a daily basis, or a customer where it's that went just all over the place and was insane, that you had to be like, all right, we've got to figure out how to put this thing together?
Yeah. So usually the biggest obstacles that we get is undisclosed drivers, right?
Okay.
So that's usually the biggest thing, because sometimes, and this happened more. I don't deal with this very much right now, being that it's a new business. But basically, what I mean by that is, especially with teenage drivers, parents don't want to add the teenage driver. The insurance gets expensive, and honestly, people got away with that for quite a bit. The kid got in a car accident. The insurance still covered it anyway. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So now the biggest issue becomes, us asking and making sure that those drivers are in it, and the parents willing to say yes, they are in it and willing to actually add them to the insurance, or exclude them and not letting them drive, just because now it's becoming more of a thing where if they're not in it, the insurance very specifically is excluding them,
Right.
and they're doing their best to find out if there is someone in there or not. And their reason behind it is there's rates that go up. There was like in, I believe it was 2015, basically all insurance across the board took a loss that year, right? And there was a lot of undisclosed drivers. There's a lot of that kind of stuff going on here in Arizona, and so prices went up across the board, right? Prices have been going up ever since, and a big part of it was everything that was going on. So a company, a private, companies are not gonna take a loss for a long time. They're gonna
Right.
they're gonna tweak their stuff to come back on top, right? To make a profit, and so those are the kind of things that happen. And unfortunately, with undisclosed drivers, if they can't determine who's the undisclosed driver, well, the rates go up for everybody, and everybody ends up paying for that person as well.
Yeah. Do you see? Obviously, there's the undisclosed drivers. Is there anything else, like if it's fraud wise, or people just trying to like navigate around certain things with insurance? Because I know a lot of people, myself included, usually look at an insurance company,
Right.
particularly medical, just throw that out there, but where it's like they always think, oh, big corporation, bunch of people who are just trying to
Right.
pull one over on you. So if you can pull one over on the insurance company, then it's
Yeah.
like kudos to you.
Right.
But still at the same time, it's like it could be, that's still fraud. It's still illegal.
Right.
So do you see that on your end of things, or do you hear about that?
Not too much. I mean, I don't, you don't hear anything like that going on too often. I mean, I guess if you did it, bigger. I mean, I guess if you don't hear much, like there's some might be going on, but you don't hear it. I mean, it's not as obvious, right? But you don't hear it very often. I mean, it's everything kind of straightforward. If there's anything that happens, it's usually it might be on the homeowner side, theft, that kind of thing that people can disclose. But it's not something that's there's been some cases here and there, some small ones, some little tweaks, and some small things. I mean, not small. I won't say small things. There have been some significant things, but it's not something that's a consistent type of thing, right? It's not something that people are doing as an everyday type of thing. People likely having a DUI, they say the car's stolen type of thing, and they left the car running in the middle of the street after an accident. Things like that. Okay, this seems very suspicious.
Right.
But not necessarily straight fraud in the sense of someone planning it ahead of time. Is more of a reaction type of thing, right? But anything being planned ahead, not too much, not necessarily. I mean, I've heard stories before, but they kind of squashed some of that stuff out already.
Yeah. What was your motivation for even starting with the agency side on just kind of, I'm pretty sure you were running that by yourself, right? So you're technically underneath the umbrella for that insurance company, but
Right.
it's still like you live and die by your own work, correct?
Right. So when I started with the first company, like how that began. So I mean, the reason I started that company is I was working. Previous to that, I was working in banking. I was there for 5 years, since I was 18 to 23 or so. After that, I started a business, and that was going pretty well. It was a marketing type business, promotional marketing. So like doing the shirts that you're wearing right now, that kind of thing. And it was actually, that was going pretty well. That was for about a year or so. It was going pretty well. The only reason that stopped is because the kind of hours I was having to put into it, the kind of customers I was working out with the casinos, I was working out with Gila River and so forth. I was doing pretty well. That it was affecting my relationship with my wife. I mean, she was my girlfriend at the time, but it was affecting the relationship. And it was one of those things where I did not want to stop, but she was kind of like telling me like, okay, well, she wasn't telling me specifically, but it was like I can tell it was not good for our relationship, right? And it was one of those things where I figured, you know what, it'd be nice to work for a tech company. So I went ahead and applied for one tech company. I'm like, if I get the job, cool. Otherwise, I'm staying and running this business still. I got the job, so I'm like, okay, I guess I'm doing sales for a tech company. And so that went on pretty well, and I loved it. It was a lot over the phone. It was all talking to different pretty geeky kind of stuff, and it was going great. But I started missing the whole business side of things again. Right now, looking back to what I was doing before, I'm like, okay, I love banking. I was doing great in that. I love talking to customers, helping people out, having that relationship with them. And I do like sales. I actually enjoy having a goal every single month and pushing and trying to get better every single month. And with no experience, with nothing, first it came up like, well, why don't you do insurance? Like, why is insurance? After a conversation I had with my own insurance agent at that time, and who was trying to recruit me to work for them. So I had that conversation, and I'm thinking, well, if I'm gonna go in, I want to go all in. Like, I don't want to go in and just have another job in that industry for someone else. If I want to go in, I want to do it 100%.
Right.
So that's what I did. Not knowing anything, never worked in insurance a day in my life, not knowing anything about the type of marketing they do or how they get their business or any of the mortgage stuff or lender stuff or anything like that. I jumped straight in, which was probably one of the not smartest, but at the same time, a blessing that happened. And what I mean by that is, I found out later on that having the experience of working for these other companies and doing sales and doing all these other things that I was doing before, and not knowing how sales are typically done in the insurance industry, helped me basically be able to have a different perspective to sales. Because I came in, I have to do sales, so I have to figure out a way to do sales. And that was much more creative than some of the other sales insurance guys, because I saw some other guys coming in, same thing, brand new as me, in the same boat, doing the same thing, but they were working for a previous agent that, for the most part, they were all working for successful agencies,
right.
Really successful agencies. And they were trying to copy what their old boss was doing. And they couldn't duplicate it. They didn't think about the cost, they didn't think about some of the certain things, what it would really take, and the experience, and all kinds of factors that were being done by the previous agent. They were trying to duplicate from day one, but they were trying to do almost like move number 5 as move number 1, right? They had to first establish the business first before they can even copy what the previous boss was doing. So me not knowing anything about the industry, I came in and did sales. Now, funny enough, I was getting people in. I was able to close some sales, get some stuff, and get some of the business going. And I was learning about the insurance as I was still learning with my first customers. But it worked out great. I mean, I had a big support system from the company. I had people helping me out through the whole process, so making sure I was doing everything correctly. All that stuff was great. As long as I was able to get people in, I had people help me out, being able to close sales, right, and offer the right product. So it ended up working out great. I'm like, I had someone for servicing. I just had to get the sales part going, and that was awesome. When on the contrary, some of the other agents coming in, they were good in the servicing side. They knew exactly what to do. They just couldn't get people in. So if they couldn't get people in, who cares what you knew? You can't sell to anyone, if they're not there in front of you. So that's what I mean by a huge. It might have been not the smartest, but it was definitely a blessing in disguise. Yeah. At the end of the day.
One of those things where it's like, I'm going to learn a lot.
Yes, exactly.
Just jump into the deep end and go from there.
And just swim. Try to swim. Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned as far as when you were working with the promotions company, that started affecting things with your relationship. Right. So how do you operate now to make sure that things aren't affecting your relationship like they were then, to make sure that your role as a father, as a husband, you're doing those well?
Right. So now it's there's certain expectations, right? So now basically in the business ran Monday through Friday with some Saturday appointments and so forth. So that's all basically pretty straightforward on the hours. If I have to stay late, my wife knows I have to stay late, to meet with customers or whatever the case may be. So that's pretty much standard. But most of the work is done throughout the day. So during the day, all the servicing stuff, maybe in the evening, or weekends might be some sales. But that's pretty much standard. And then the promotion side, working with some of the casinos out there, working with I was working with a lot with the university here as well. Is there was a lot of sales during the day, and I guess you could say almost like partying at night, like basically going out and taking them out for dinner, taking them out for drinks, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And that almost started becoming the norm. So I was basically befriending all these customers that we're working with, and they were saying this contracts, and it was great. So so at night it was basically friending and having and being out there and available, just in a way partying or hanging out with them. But during the day we were doing sales, which was working out great because I was establishing the relationships at night, but getting the sales done in the morning, right? But obviously that's only sustainable for so long, because if you're gone all day and you're out there having drinks or dinner, hanging out with different people and stuff, well, it's not the best type of environment when my girlfriend at the time was at home and is like wondering what the heck I'm doing out there till 11 at night or 12 at night or whatever the case may be.
Looks like you're having a good time without me.
Right. yeah. You're having too much of a good time. It's like and then she'll ask me, okay, what did he close? I didn't close anything. We're just talking, and it's like, no, there's no business, no business conversations whatsoever. And
but
my mind
like
is
the double side where it's like it's the relationship, so it's the investment for down the road.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what was going on, right? But her, it's like, no, it sounds like you're just partying out there and having a good time. Which, yes, it was a good time, but of course that's where, it didn't meet up, and which, in her point of view, I completely agree. I mean, looking back, I'm like, that's not definitely was not good luck.
Yeah. So now, is it just a lot easier, like you said, schedule-wise? Do you guys have anything implemented where it's like, hey, like Sundays are off, Sunday's a complete family day, or is it like, hey, there's times where I've got stuff that I've got to take care of, and it's just try and prioritize time for the family throughout your schedule?
Right. No, yeah. So Sundays, it's family time. There's been some weird off scenarios, where I work, but those are very rare. It doesn't really happen. I mean, it's not something that it's really an issue. It's just, it never happens. So yes, Sunday is always family day. Maybe at night when kids are asleep and stuff, I might do some work. But throughout the week, usually Monday through Friday, if there's anything that's gonna come up, if after hours, usually an appointment, or usually it's already set ahead of time. So those are pretty easy to just go ahead and set apart. So yeah, I mean it's much more, I would say, balanced and a lot more communication going on, because it's easy to kind of get carried away when you own a business and kind of forget about things like family and different things when you're trying to grow, especially.
Right. So there's times where you can kind of just get in the mess, and then it's just I think especially as guys, we can be very just focused in on one thing at a time. Right. So it's like, hey, if we're going into work, it's like in the back of our head, it's like, well, this was for the family, and then it's like exactly. Just everything else fades away, and it's like, hey, do we ever see you? It's like maybe. Right.
No, yeah, it's definitely was a struggle at the beginning. I would say I've learned to I guess communicate a lot better, which has helped a lot. But it was definitely an issue. Something I had to grow and learn and figure out. Yeah.
So what would a day-to-day look like for you? So like, I know for me, it's typically it'll be like come to the office. I've got people that I'm trying to build the relationships with that I've interacted with previously, follow up with them, stuff like that. In the afternoons, typically if they're off work, we've got showings. Right. And if things go well, we're writing a contract. So typically that'd be a flow to a day. Right. So I'm not writing contracts every day, but just like, so what would your day to day look like?
So it's changed, right? So having the previous business where it was already established, is one thing, and then having a startup is a completely different schedule, and so describe what I was doing before. Before it was basically once everything is established, every single morning had a team meeting, make sure we all know what's going on, determine what's the pending issues, right? So any big issues I need to worry about myself. I like to know exactly every single issue that's going on, but there are certain things that only I can go ahead and fix. And if they can fix it, then okay, let's make sure this gets taken care of. If it's so, usually we'll start with a morning meeting, make sure we know where the sales numbers are at, make sure where the service stuff is at, make sure we're all on the same page. Then after that, we usually have to work on the servicing. So if there's any pending issues, that's when I have to take over, and that's what I usually do first thing in the morning after the meeting. Then on usually in the second half of the day, still in the morning. Then I focus on marketing, make sure the lenders, everything's good, make sure that that everything's going on well. So it's a lot of servicing and making sure the wheels are still spinning in the morning. In the evening, that's when sales time, right? So that's when we have to focus. Okay, what are the numbers? What do we have to meet? How many calls do we have to make? Who are we following up with? What are the sales are in the pipeline that we feel like we can close or we can go ahead and definitely work on? Sometimes what happens is, someone's should be closing with you. You're offering better rates, better coverage, better everything. It's just a matter of them pulling the trigger, right? And so sometimes determine who are those people in the pipeline and making sure that we follow up with them and stuff. But at the same time, not make sure that we also are thinking of the future customers, making calls to kind of keep that pipeline filled at all times, and not just focus on closing and then forget about sales later on.
Right.
So that's the beginning, right? That's when the business was established. Now I have to go back to what I did at the very beginning, which the servicing side. I mean, right now I'm by myself, right? So the servicing side it's all on me. Everything's on me. But the servicing side is a lot smaller now. It's only there's quite a bit of customers I have so far, but it's still pretty small. I mean, there's not too much servicing going on every single day. It's very, very minimal. So a lot of my bigger part of my day is focused on the sales, but along with being able to get some of those the lenders and some of those relationships going. So I would say the relationships become I won't say a bigger part than before, because before it was still I would say the same chunk, but definitely there's a lot more follow up and things that need to happen just to be able to get that establish that relationship. Once the relationships are established, great, then everything's fine. But being that my sister took over the previous agency, it's not for me to come in and be like, okay, well, I'm taking all my relationships back. You know what I mean? I kind of establish everything all over again, just to make sure that we don't step on each other's toes on that aspect. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of basically establishing all the foundation of what the business is like. Still, of course, I have to get the sales in, so that can't stop. That's always going to be something I focus on in the evenings, especially. But the timeline does change a little bit just based on how much customers you have, how many employees you have, and the kind of tasks that everybody has in place.
So do you guys have a contact management system, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So I use a contact management that we have it set up where we have certain follow-ups every single day, certain tasks that we need to focus on.
Yep.
But at the same time, reports, metrics, where we're getting our customers from, what's working, what's not working, and where we need to concentrate a little bit more on.
Yeah. I remember when I started here, it was like they had us, the team lead has everyone basically set up with a contact management system, and then it's been interesting being like, this is awesome, and I would be extremely lost without this. I'd be like, because it's just nice to be like, oh, okay, we need to follow up with this person today. Yeah. And it's just...
and I think the hard part of it, right, is getting used to it, right? Because once everything's set up and flowing nicely, it's great.
Oh, yeah.
The thing is getting you and your team to actually, someone calls in, first reaction is enter that person on the contact manager, right? So it's very easy and very nice to use, but you definitely have to establish some habits on getting things done.
Which I know for me, it became a natural habit just because I knew here's what happens. I answer the phone, I have a good phone call with someone, give me an hour, and like it's not in the forefront of my mind anymore, and I can forget about it for a while. So I just knew that, hey, if I have a phone call, whatever it is, if it goes in the system, I set the task, whatever I need to do, good. Because, but otherwise I'd be like 3 weeks later, just all of a sudden like, I haven't heard from, and then, so.
Oh yeah, I've had a lot of those moments, and believe me, it's makes you look very unprofessional. Makes you look, it makes you look that almost like you don't care.
Right.
But in reality, is you get distracted so easily that you forget what's going on.
Or even just the volume.
Right. So yeah, sometimes if you don't have nothing going on, so that's usually what the biggest issue is when someone first starts out. Right. Is you don't have much going on. So every single one person that you get, you're treating them like gold because.
Yep.
You don't really have much on your pipeline, right?
And you can keep everything in the forefront of your brain.
100%, right? I mean, you're thinking of that one customer that you want to close because you're in survival mode, right? At that point. So what happens later on is once you have, especially employees, and you have things going on, it's much easier to forget. Not because you don't care about the customer, but because you have so much stuff going on all at once. And so that's when it comes in. So yeah, if you can start off from the very, very beginning, that would be my suggestion is. Get it started, and as dumb as it might feel, I feel like sometimes because it's like I got you might be thinking, okay, I only got 3 people on my pipeline. I'm not gonna forget about these 3 people. Well, still write it down because it's gonna create that habit for when you do have much more and you have a lot more going on.
Yeah, when that 3 to 5 goes from 30 to 50.
Exactly, you won't be able to do that anymore.
Yep.
You can't rely on yourself anymore. So that's when all that hard work and payoff and habit is gonna pay off.
Yeah, if you're to talk to someone about they were looking to jump into and say like, hey, Carlos, I see what you're doing. Mm-hmm. I want to do it as well. What would be your recommendation for him as far as to say like, hey, take the time, go work for a broker first? Because I know you mentioned like there's certain things experientially that it's like, hey, you can just pick up by rubbing shoulders with the correct people.
Right.
So would you go that route? Would you say like, hey, here's what you need to know, and then dive in, just expect that it's going to be a mess and get yourself through it, and it's it'll be all right on the other side? Or how do you approach some of that?
It's hard for me to really recommend one or the other, just because from my experiences, yes, they worked out, but there was a lot of bumpy roads along the way, right?
Yeah.
So great thing is I had a good support system, especially with my first company, where if I had any questions, anything happened, it was a quick phone call, got that resolved. It was quick, done, or if I took the customer information to do a quote, but I wasn't sure exactly what I was doing, okay, make a call, figure it out, and go from there, right? And believe me, some of these guys they took a lot of phone calls at the very beginning. It was multiple calls a day sometimes. So I wasn't afraid to be asking questions and basically let them know I didn't know anything. I wasn't afraid to not know everything, right?
Right.
So which helped a lot. I wasn't pretending to, and I would even tell customers, they will ask me a question that they didn't know the answer. I would tell them, I'm not 100% sure, but let me make sure I get the right answer for you, and I'll make those phone calls, make you figure it out, and then call them back. At first, that it might make me look a little silly, or they might think, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But I realized soon afterwards, like, people didn't really expect me to know everything 100%.
Yep.
But as long as I gave them the right information and was able to, and they can trust me that I was gonna make sure I did the best thing for them, then they can trust me, right? And which was exactly what I was doing. I can't say do it my way because I don't know what kind of support system they might have and what kind of drive they're gonna have. In the fact of making sure that they figure everything out, because it can definitely be overwhelming at times. But if they go work for someone, my biggest recommendation is learn everything you can. Learn not just how their applications and business works, but learn how they do their marketing. Pay attention to their marketing. Pay attention to everything they do. Because I realized that, unfortunately, and this boggled my mind, is I would ask some of these rep or agents how their previous boss worked, because I knew who their previous bosses were, and I knew they were doing well, very well in some cases. And I would ask them like details like about their marketing, things that there's no, like they had to have seen. There's no way they didn't know, or I couldn't have seen. And it's not like there was a secret or anything. I wanted to get their perspective, right? And honestly, most of the time they had no idea. And I'm thinking, how are you starting the business without even trying to learn everything you possibly can from your current boss, right?
Because there's a point to becoming a material expert, and usually if there's someone who's a boss in a situation,
right.
even though like the stereotypical like bosses are jackwagons, it's like to
right.
say like they do know something,
right?
Typically,
right.
So if you don't look at what they're doing and say, hey, I want to understand what you do and be able to pull at least the 5 good things from them, it's like,
right.
What are you doing?
No, exactly. And the thing is, even if you can't apply whatever they're doing right away, it might be something that you're able to apply later on.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example of this. So there's one agent out there that he was very laser focused on his marketing. What I mean by this is his whole marketing was on leads. He would buy leads.
Yep.
I spoke to him and I asked him different questions about retention or about calling recalls or calling back and whatever, all kinds of different win backs, etc. And I realized that this agent, he started saying, "Oh, maybe I should be doing that. Maybe I should be doing that." There was a lot of basic things that he was not doing that he could definitely improve. Now, this guy was killing it. Don't get me wrong; he was doing extremely, extremely well. But his niche was so specific that all he did focus was on new leads. He would buy leads and he would focus on those leads. And he got extremely good at that one thing that, he didn't have to worry about everything else because that was kind of saving them. So unfortunately for him, if that somehow an issue happened there, he's done, right? Because if prices go up, whatever happens, it can definitely affect them too much because that's everything he's doing. Now, one of his previous reps became an agent. And she knew he was buying leads, so she tried to buy leads as well, but it wasn't working out for her. Well, the thing for her was he had been doing it for such a long time. He had special rates. He was buying in bulk, insane amount of money, over tens of thousands a month in bulk. So not only was he buying in bulk, but he was also getting special rates because he was doing it for such a long time.
Right.
So the price per lead was very, very minimal. So her coming in, she wasn't spending the money he was spending.
Right.
And they didn't have the time that he had doing it. So her price per lead was like double, triple than what he was paying. Right. So once you use that factor to determine if it's worth it or not. Well, for him it was 100% worth it. He was killing it.
Right.
But for her, it was actually killing her business.
Yeah.
And yeah, she did. Unfortunately, she didn't survive. She ended up having to. I think she moved somewhere else and is working for a broker now, I guess. But she's was an example of someone I realized that you can't copy every single thing someone else is doing. You have to really go into the details and figure out why are things working.
Right.
Now, I never worked for him. These are conversations I had with him or with her. Things that he wasn't hiding. Things that he was very open about. Things that she could have picked up from the very beginning before leaving. But sometimes people don't ask the right questions or they just figured, if he can do it, I can do it. Not realizing what it's really taking to make that happen.
And I think that mentality of like, if what one man can do, another man can do, it's like, absolutely. But at the same time, it's like, kind of to your point, what are they doing?
Right.
And so it's when you can take a look and say like, the two things that you're doing, they're not the same.
Right.
That's when...
Yeah. They might look the same, but they're not the same. Yeah.
Right. Do you have any practices that you try and implement for yourself to keep just on top of what's going on inside of your industry, or just as far as to say like, hey, like I have this habit that I try and go through every day to make sure I'm on top of my game every day when I come in? Right.
So on the insurance side specifically, I will say things don't change very often. And I mean by that by the companies can change, products come out, that kind of thing. Okay, you kind of be on top of it, but it's not something that comes out every single day. On the insurance laws and stuff, I mean those are certain laws. They can only change so much. I mean, there's laws in place.
They're not going to have a huge like, all right, rewrite the whole thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, bodily injury, property damage, that stays the same, right? That's determined by the state. So there's not too many changes that happen on that part, but to keep me ahead, I mean, keep me always thinking outside the box. That's what I realized was honestly what allowed me to survive in my business. Because there's definitely multiple times where I was in the brink of failure. Is learning and just reading. So I do read a lot of business books. I try to every single morning to go ahead and read for about 30 minutes a day, whatever book I'm reading that day, or I'm on that at that time. And just read and just keep my mind focused and sharp on just being able to think about business and think about how I can grow it and marketing and all that kind of stuff that comes along with just running a team, etc. So it's basically that reading things it's basically what's keeping me. I feel like it's keeping me sharp and focused and having that right mentality every single day.
Yeah. What are you reading right now?
So right now, it's a book I read before, so I'm going through it all over again. It's called Your Next 5 Moves.
Okay.
Patrick B. So that book's focus is on kind of what I was saying earlier, right? Like, hey, you might be doing step 5 at step 1. Like, what's the right correlation? What do you need to be doing? Not only that, getting yourself in order is trying to think as far ahead as possible. Not think of, okay, I'm going to do this tomorrow and this next week, or I'm just going to focus on this marketing. No, like, get to focus on what's the end goal and what the steps are you going to take to get there, and make sure you have a clear plan on your goals.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then we've been going to the same church for quite a while, so
Right.
Question I like to ask a lot of people is just like, how does your faith influence the work that you do?
A lot. I think a big reason I decided to come back, because one thing I mentioned this to you before, is when I left my previous company, I said I was never going to do insurance again, right?
Yeah.
I said I'm never going to do this again. So I actually did leave the industry for about roughly a year or so. And I came back, right? I came back helping my sister out with certain things, doing something, and then doing the brokerage and stuff. But the reason, and the reason this ties back up is because when I came back, one of my biggest anchors I had when I was working for the previous company is I saw some of the shady stuff going on, especially to in the Hispanic market, to lower income areas. So on the lower income side, there was a lot of shady things going on. And what I mean by that is extra fees, not right coverages, not right in type of insurance. Basically, people were getting screwed over. And that was something that bothered me, and I always figured, like, I remember praying and thinking, like, okay, what's God calling me to do? And then I realized God's calling me to go into these communities and help out educating them in insurance. Not necessarily that they have to come with me. I'm cool with someone calling me and asking me about insurance, and they go somewhere else if it makes sense for them. Cool, no problem. Like, there's been times when I literally have rejected business that's willing to come my way, but I know it's not the best product, or not the best product, but I know it's not the best decision. I know they have a great product. They might be paying and they're paying a great price. Stay where you're at because it's great. So I'm willing to have those conversations. So I'm not saying that they have to come with me, but I know that there's a lack of education when it comes to insurance, and unfortunately, a lot of the marketing and a lot of people are focusing on those target markets are companies that are honestly taking advantage of them and not doing best. So and I realized, it's hard to come out of poverty if everything's stacked against you, right? If you have companies that are charging you extra, if you have companies that are not reporting your insurance to MBD, which means that if you try to go to a bigger company or a better company, they're going to see your record and say, oh, this guy's never had insurance, so it looks like he's an irresponsible driver. We're going to give him a higher rate. So they decide to stay with a previous company that's not reporting, that's actually hurting them, even though they have insurance the whole time. But they're actually hurting them, but they can't really leave, because if they leave, they're going to pay more.
Right.
But yeah, they're charging them broker fees and all kinds of stuff on top of that. It's just this weird cycle where people can't leave. They're kind of stuck, but they're stuck because of companies that they're with are hurting them as well. So there was a preaching that we were hearing once that talked about, the people that are basically the most affected, or most impacted negatively, and I realized, this is how I can actually come into my community and help out, realizing what was going on already, and knowing that I can come in and definitely make a positive change towards that.
Yeah, I was talking with a good friend of mine. His name's Matt Ducharme. He's the guy I told you is at Alhambra right now.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're having lunch, and he just asked me, he's like, "Hey, how are things going?" And
yeah.
I was like, in the part of our conversation, I was like, I'm just like, my default usually seems to be like, I'm angry a lot of times, like, and it's just different stuff as far as like, even if it's little, like, people are annoying, we've got these young people, and
right.
It's just like, and so his whole response to me was like, hey, he's like, I've been there, and there's times where God is going to put things in our hearts for a reason, and he's like, it's not the fact that the anger is incorrect,
right?
But it's that what is God looking for you to do with that? And so it's in the same way for me, as far as it was like, oh, okay, having to then say things that I was avoiding because they'd make me frustrated or angry. It was like,
right.
No. You need to go push into those things, and
right.
you need to immerse yourself in those things, because
right.
that's why, like, it's in some ways, it's like, who's going to stand in the gap to take the hits? Who's going to help
right.
these people out? And it's like, all right, like, if God's calling me to that area at this moment in time, then it's like, okay.
Right.
So.
No, you're 100% correct. I mean, sometimes, like I said, I try to avoid it. I try to go away from it. And I did have some impact on the community when I was working for a previous company. However, there was only so much I can do, right? Because, I mean, it's just one company. That's not actually the company's target market. So it's really
right.
hard for me to go ahead and use that leverage. So being on the broker side definitely allows me to be much more open to be able to do that. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I try to walk away. I try to leave. Felt kind of like Jonah trying to go the opposite way. But yeah, it's definitely something that's definitely brought me back. And yeah, I mean, it's I've dealt with a lot of customers that unfortunately were being affected negatively, and yeah, we've been able to make some changes. So that's definitely a positive, and that's definitely the biggest focus I was trying to come back towards.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've been rolling for over an hour, and I know you've got other stuff to be doing with your day, so I've got a couple questions that we'll just round this out with.
Okay.
Just shoot them off real quick to you. So, what's been the most impactful thing that you've learned?
Creativity. Thinking outside the box. Trying to go ahead and focus on what I can do, but not thinking of what's everybody else doing, but how can I go ahead and make it better.
Favorite movie?
Lincoln Lawyer.
Okay.
Yeah.
First character strength that comes to mind?
Focused.
Yeah. Least authentic Mexican food restaurant besides Taco Bell?
Chipotle.
People are going to be mad about that one.
I know, they might not realize it, right?
Where can people contact you or follow what you're doing?
Yeah, so they can contact me. Actually, stop that. Contact me. Dude, I don't know.
Is there a website?
I use my website, realagency.com.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, realagency.com. RELYagency.com.
Cool. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That looked kind of off at the end right there. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't think about that part. I forgot to read that. I was so focused on the Lincoln Lawyer part. I'm like, wait a minute, I can't remember. That's funny, man.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's all we have for today. So if you guys like the show, please subscribe, tell a friend, and until next time, I hope your hammer stays accurate, your Wi-Fi fast, and your work blessed. See you, everybody.
Thank you.